So good evening to all of you. So today let us look at one of the important aspects of your UPSC preparation, especially those who are writing mains this year. How to maximize your score in public administration. As all of you know, you have to get at least 280 marks in the optional to be able to get top scores in the exam in overall civil service examination, and you should also be getting top 100 ranks. Again, you must be scoring at least 280 marks in your optional. With little bit of luck, you can go beyond 300 marks also. And in public administration also, some time back, one of our students has scored 338 marks also. So it's not that you cannot be scoring those kind of marks, but the question is how to get those marks and what you are going to do to get those kind of scores. Because if you are getting anything around 220 to 230, it may not be sufficient for you to get you can say top services. Why? Because if you look at in the last 10 years when UPSC has removed one optional and have introduced other papers of general studies, on an average all top 100 rankers in the last 10 years have scored at least 280 marks in the optional. They have scored at least 280 marks in the optional. And another advantage with the public administration is you are not only getting good marks in public administration, but it will help you to get very good marks in General Studies papers also, especially GS paper 2 and GS paper 4. So let us see what we are going to discuss today and how we are going to approach the things. So what we are going to discuss in this session, as you can see here, the first thing is how to score at least 280 marks in the optional, and how to improve your answer writing. What are the important topics for the upcoming main examination? Then how to link paper 1 concepts with examples from Indian administration, and how to attempt these analytical questions, especially in paper 1, which UPSC is routinely asking. Then who are the important thinkers from paper 1 whose concepts are regularly asked, and analysis of the recent trends in the previous year's public administration mains question papers, and of course how to use knowledge of public administration in GS paper 2 and GS paper 4, and what are the last minute revision of important topics. And I will also discuss in the last few years some important difficult questions that were asked from previous years. and what are the important government reports that you should be revising in the last minute. And finally, you can also ask questions about your preparation, how to cover all the topics at the last minute. So these are all the things that we will be discussing in today's session. Let us start with all these questions one by one. First and foremost, how to score, as I said, minimum 280 marks in public administration, without which it becomes almost impossible for you to get into any top services. So this is where answer writing becomes very important. This is where answer writing becomes very important. Why? Because in paper 1 and paper 2, whether it is paper 1 or paper 2, what really matters is how you write your answers than what you are writing. At the end of the day, if you look at the syllabus of public administration, it is very less, and you don't have to read too many thinkers also. In order to give surprises every year, UPSC will come out with one thinker which you may not have heard in the entire question paper. And what normally students do, they will think about only that particular question and they do not look at other questions. And in the process, they will not write good answers for any of the questions. You have to attempt around 19 questions. Around 19 questions you have to attempt. And out of these 19 questions, it is not possible to write best of the answers for all the questions. Nobody can write best of the answers. So you'll be writing at least best answers for at least 12 to 13 questions. Best answers means those kind of answers that can give you 60% marks. Those answers that can give you 60% marks. Especially 10 markers, you can easily get 6 out of 10. From the point of view of the person who is evaluating the answers, if it is 20 marker, giving 12 marks he might feel bad, or 14 marks he will think that it is impossible, because 14 marks big. On the other hand, 6 marks is not a big thing. So that is where again the secret of success lies. You have to make sure that the small questions, 10 markers, you are writing the best of the answers, so that there out of 100, you are writing section A 5 10 markers, section B another 5 10 markers. Out of this 100, you must be scoring at least 60. So that in remaining 150, even if you are scoring 90 marks, still you are getting error. Or even if you are scoring 80 marks, that also 140 marks. So this is where you have to remember. I think few years back, that is what happened. One of the students, he just asked me how to attempt the questions. I said that focus on these things. Small questions, the questions with the less number of marks, the tendency is to give more marks. If the examiner likes your answer, he can give you 7 out of 10 also. And of course, as I said, he ultimately scored 338 marks in public administration. So that is what you have to remember. For a longer question, for bigger questions, those questions which have much weightage, the tendency is not to give too many marks. For example, for a 20 marker, he may not give you 14, or a 25 marker, he will not give you even 18 marks also. But for a 10 marker, he can definitely give you 7. That is where you have to remember. These are all what you call smart preparation. And the best part of the 10 markers is that the answer is always there in the question itself. Either 15 markers or 20 markers, you might not know the answer. But for 10 markers, the statement is so simple that the answer is always there in the question itself. You don't have to think, because the question can be about defining public administration. The statement itself gives you all the information about what you are going to write in the answer. So that is the reason why make sure that you are doing these 10 markers very well. How to get those 280 marks, that is what we are looking at. Make sure that you are getting in these 10 markers very well, doing those 10 markers really well. And you are not compromising with your 6 or 7 marks out of 10 marks. That is the first and foremost thing that you have to remember. Then another thing is that these 10 markers you have to write very fast also, because if you are completing them in say there is 100 marks, maybe in our in around 70 or 80 minutes, then you have more time for the rest of the questions, because there are some questions which are difficult, which are analytical, where you need to little bit think about answer also. And this is where again you have to use your smart brains. Write very fast for these 10 markers. As I said, you don't have to think much about those 10 markers, because I will be taking up some of the difficult questions also. You can see that they're not they do not require that much of a thought process also on your part. So you have to write it very fast. Then after this, the next question that we have to look at here is that these 15 markers and 20 markers. Now, in the last few years, the practice of UPSC is that they're asking 20, 20, 10, or 20, 15, and 15. This is what the standard practice. The first question and fifth question, which are compulsory, where you have 100 marks. Then second, third, and fourth in section A, and 6, 7, and 8 in section B. What they are doing is that deliberately, out of this 2 questions, you will know the answer, but one question becomes difficult. That is where how to choose the question becomes more important. So here what you have to do is that first look at these marks. What are the marks for each and every question? As I said, it can be 20, 20, or 10, or 20, 15, or 15. And in this, you know answers to two questions. One question you don't know. Then how to select? You select this one, 20, 20, and 10. If you don't know for 10 markers, no problem, because you are writing good answers for 40 marks. You are writing good answers for 40 marks. Here, you will be writing only for 35 marks. This is again a very smart way of picking up the questions. So that is the reason why make sure that you are attempting those questions where you have maximum number of marks, maximum amount of marks. That is what is the next thing that you have to remember when it comes to selecting the questions. Because in the last few years, if you look at it, it is constantly a recurring theme of UPSC that 2 questions are relatively easy. One question will always be, if not impossible, difficult to answer. That is where you have to be selecting. And again, what you have to remember is that these 2 questions you have to write very fast, so that you can spend a little bit of time on thinking about answer to this third question. Because at the end of the day, you will get marks only for writing all questions, all 19 questions. All 19 questions you have to get right. And if you are not writing answers, that means out of 250 marks, you will be writing only for 230 marks. That will not help your cause. Whether it is general studies or public administration, you are not going to get maximum marks unless and until you complete a question paper. And that is the reason why you must make sure that you are attempting all the questions. You need some amount of time to answer those questions which you don't know. And that is the reason why make sure that the questions for which you are writing very fast. Then proceeding further, what else that you have to do here to get good marks? And if you look at paper 1 as such, they're asking 90% of the questions from very well-known thinkers only. If they're asking questions from thinkers, if they're asking at least 6 questions, 5 thinkers you already know. Only 1 thinker you may not be knowing. So don't worry about that 1 thinker, because UPSC also has to show to the candidates that they are also working very hard in preparing the question paper. And why only optional? In GS also there are so many questions for which you don't know the answers. So you don't have to worry about them. Don't worry about the questions from the thinkers which you have not heard. A Reddit model of leadership that they have asked last year. You may not have heard about him, because there are hundreds of post-behavioral thinkers. You may not have to know all of them also. So don't worry about the thinkers that you don't know, but focus on the thinkers that you know. And who are the major thinkers that UPSC repeatedly asking questions? From classical thinkers, you have the questions are repeatedly asked from Taylor and Fayol, and of course Weber, and sometimes Gulick and Ervig. And if you look at last 10 years, they are asking questions only from these classical thinkers. Either they are asking questions independently of each and every thinker, or they are asking you to make a comparison between Taylor and Fayol. They are asking you to make a comparison between Taylor and Fayol. So what you have to remember here is that prepare a short notes on all these thinkers. Very short notes on all these thinkers. A short notes means maximum say 100 words. Because in the examination hall, you can expand that to 150 words, or if it is required 250 words also. Prepare a very short notes. And when you are preparing a short notes, the notes also should be very specific. What do you mean by very specific here? For example, whenever you are studying a particular thinker, why that particular thinker had come out with that particular theory? Why did Taylor come out with scientific management theory? Because whenever you are writing answers, you should always start your answer with the why aspect of the thinker. Similarly, what are the assumptions of that particular thinker? Because in public administration, you cannot have completely universal theories. So what are the assumptions? Then what are the important features? And what about the application? And what is the criticism or limitations? What are criticism or limitations? And finally, what are the interlinkages? What are interlinkages? That means linking Taylor to Weber, linking Taylor to Fayol. Basically, you're talking about both similarities as well as differences. So if you can prepare a very short notes, about all these thinkers, if you can prepare a very short note, short notes means 1 page, not more than that, and you are only writing the important points. And so that in the examination hall, when the question is asked, you are not thinking about the answers. That is the most important thing. You are not thinking about the answers. The moment you see the question, you are able to write the answer, because you need some time to think about other analytical questions. For thinkers, you should not be thinking about the answers. So for every thinker, you can prepare like this. How many thinkers you have to prepare here? Very few thinkers. I said these 4 thinkers. Then when it comes to neoclassical thinkers, you can start with Mary Parker Foley, or then Elton Mayo. And if we again look at the last 10 years of question papers, both MP Foley and Elton Mayo are asked every year alternatively. 1 year they are asking MP Foley, other year they will be asking Elton Mayo. So when you know that one question definitely will be there, try to be proactive and prepare a very good synopsis. Try to understand the soul of the thinker. When you talk about, say, someone like Elton Mayo, what is the soul of Elton Mayo's theory? Elton Mayo has said that the conflict between the management and workers is not because of economic factors. It is because of psychological and sociological needs. And similarly, when it comes to Mary Parker Foley, what is the essence of MP Foley's theory? The essence of MP Foley's theory is all about giving respect to individuals. She is focused mostly on psychological aspects of organization. And that is the reason why she spoke about what is called capitalism with a human face. So if you try to make the essence of that particular thinker and write it in one page, automatically the question will be from what you have written as part of your notes. That is what again you should be doing, because once you start doing like this, automatically it becomes easy. Next thing that you have to remember here is that whenever you are reading these thinkers, make sure that you are providing examples from Indian administration. You are providing examples from Indian administration. This is where your analytical abilities can be seen. Your analytical abilities. When you are giving examples from Indian administration, what is the message you are sending to the evaluator? You are sending the message that you not only have the conceptual clarity, but you also have the ability to apply those concepts to Indian administration. So that is the reason why, again, as part of your preparation, what you are doing, for every thinker, from Taylor to Fredericks, for every thinker, be prepared with examples from Indian administration. At least 2-3 examples from Indian administration. For Taylor's scientific management theory, you have to think about examples from Indian administration. For example, the memorandum of understanding that the government of India has signed with the public sector enterprises is nothing but Taylorism, neo-Taylorism. NPM, autonomy and accountability. Then you will give other further example. After signing the MOUs with the public sector enterprises which are incurring losses, how many of them have witnessed a turnaround in terms of making profits, in terms of becoming competitive in the markets? So when you can come out with these kind of examples. Similarly, when it comes to Mary Parker Follett, you can give the example integration, give the example of coalition governments. Decision making in coalition government should be based on integration. Otherwise, what is happening what is the reason why the previous coalition governments were not successful? Because they have opted for compromise than integration. Similarly, give the example of union-state relations. It is mostly of dominance, but not of integration. Then give the examples of integration whenever we have seen these union-state relations. You can give the examples of integration there. For example, take the case of GST, Goods and Services Tax, which is nothing but an example of integration. The process of GST started in 2003, and it was implemented. It was completed in 2017. 14 years. Negotiations after negotiations took place between the central and state governments. Finally, both of them have agreed. They had come to an integrated solution. So when you are writing answers, how to get those 150, 160 marks in your paper 1, for every thinker, from Taylor or from Woodrow Wilson till Fredericks, you must make sure that you are getting those examples ready. That is part of your preparation. Not many thinkers are there. Fortunately, we don't have many thinkers as such. Getting the examples should not be a difficult task at all for you. And if you are reading the newspapers regularly, you can easily get all those examples. So this is about the human relations thinkers and neoclassical thinkers. And every year in the last 10 years, they are asking both Follett and Moyo, or alternatively, either Moyo or Follett. So when we know that they are definitely asking, why can't we have a little bit of more conceptual clarity about them, so that you are achieving your objective, 60% marks. Then proceeding further, in behavioral thinkers, you have Chester Bernard and Herbert Simon. Again, in the last 10 years, every year, either alternatively or in the same year, they are asking questions about decision making or behavioral theory. Every year. Again, prepare a synopsis. I said 1-page synopsis. What are the assumptions? Why the person had come out with a theory? Then what are the important features? Then what are the applications? And applications with more focus on Indian administration. Examples from Indian administration. Then you are talking about what are the criticisms and what are the interlinkages. For example, both Bernard and Simon spoke about one aspect which is common. That is, they said that acceptance as the basis of decision implementation. But both of them had given different reasons why employees accept the decision of their superiors. When it comes to Bernard, he had said that they will accept the decisions only when 4 conditions are fulfilled. When they understood the order, when it is in consonance with their individual motives, when it is consistent with their organizational objectives, when it falls within their physical and mental capabilities. Whereas Simon had given completely different reasons. And what you are expected to know is that you are expected to compare both of them. Once you prepare your notes in this manner, and that is what exactly UPSC will be asking, and you don't have to think in the examination hall when writing answers. Someone has said that the traditions and customs are such that from our childhood onwards we have been taught to respect our elders. That is the reason why when they become part of the organizations, they as part of the traditions and customs, they will be implementing the orders of their superiors. He also said that workers have this fear of being boycotted by the rest of the workers if they don't implement the orders. And he said that these management, the top level managers would be taking rational decisions that would help the organization to maximize efficiency, that means profits, and workers also benefit out of increased wages also. So he had given completely different reasons. Both of them spoke about only one concept, but giving different reasons for explaining that concept, and that is what exactly you must focus on. Similarly, if you look at classical thinkers and Simon, both of them have similarities and differences, and that is what UPSC keeps on asking all the time. They are not asking you any simple questions like what is Simon's decision making theory. That is part of graduation examinations, but they will be focusing more on analysis. For example, if you look at classical thinkers and Simon, that's what we say. Simon is much more closer to the classical thinkers than behavioral thinkers, because his concept of rationality is exactly what classical thinkers have spoken about, rationality. The only difference is that the classical thinkers spoke about rationality when it comes to decision implementation, whereas Simon spoke about rationality when it comes to decision making. If you have this kind of simple conceptual clarity, and then again it is very, very easy to get marks. And after this, another important thinker that you have to prepare your notes is Fredericks, because every year you can find Ricks at least 1 or 2 questions minimum. That means at least 25-30 marks. One of the most important thinkers. His comparative public administration and the current status of CPA, which they have asked last year also. So last year from CPA only we had around 30 marks. So that is the reason why be very thorough with Ricks. And again, they are not asking any very difficult questions as such. If you have the basic concepts clear, then automatically you will be scoring good marks. It is as simple as that one. And that is what, when you are preparing your 1-page notes or 2 pages notes, because Ricks is a big thinker, so you can have 2 pages. What you must focus on is having that conceptual clarity. And of course, you must also focus on approaches to the study of comparative public administration. As we study, say that Max Weber's bureaucratic theory of organization is the oldest approach. So if you have those kind of things clear, automatically you'll be getting very good marks. So these are all the major thinkers where you have to prepare very good synopsis. Then the post-behavioral thinkers, we have theories of motivation, leadership, decision making, and communication, and the theories of morale. There, you don't have to spend that much amount of time also. Just to focus on what is the crux of their theories. For example, Abraham Maslow, that means automatically you should remember about hierarchy of needs. You should also remember that Maslow is known as the father of motivational theories. You should also remember how Maslow's hierarchy of needs has influenced all the modern theories of motivation also. All the modern theories of motivations are nothing but an extension of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow had given for it is a psychological theory of needs, whereas the modern thinkers, what they have done, they have applied this psychological theory to organizations. So once you are clear about Maslow, you can answer all the other thinkers. So yeah, that is how you have to do the things. And they will keep on asking about, again, very well-known thinkers only. They'll definitely ask about Frederick Herzberg. They will ask about Douglas McGregor. They will definitely ask about Francis Likert. They will definitely ask about Chris Argyris. These are all the thinkers which are frequently, almost on a every year regular basis, they are asking all these kind of questions, and that is where you have to be preparing. And for all these thinkers, you don't require even one page also, because their theories are the so-called concepts are very less. The moment Chris Argyris, it means you have to remember two things: immaturity, maturity theory, single loop learning and double loop learning. And then Chris Argyris is over. The moment you are talking about Douglas McGregor, theory X and theory Y, and his concept of integration and job enrichment and transactional influence. So these are all some of the keywords. If you are able to grasp those keywords, you can write best of the answers. As usual, what you have to remember here is, again, you must make sure that for all these thinkers, you have ready-made examples from Indian administration. This is what again you have to remember for all these thinkers, and that is what is preparation. When you can get easily 160 marks, why do you want to lose it? Because even if you work very hard, say in GS paper 1, you will not be scoring 140 marks there. Nobody has got 140, 150 marks in GS paper 1. If you put that little bit effort in here about the thinkers, again, then you can easily get 160 marks. That is what, again, smart preparation. UPSC will not deny you IAS because you have scored 330 marks in optional and you have scored only 60 marks in GS paper 1. They will not deny you IAS. So it does not really matter where you are getting marks. Ultimately, whether you are getting the marks or not is what really matters in UPSC examination. And that is where, again, optional becomes very important from your examination perspective. And that is where you have to look at your priorities also. Unnecessarily spending a lot of time on those topics in general studies, where in spite of working very hard, you knew that you will not be able to get that kind of very high scores. So that is where you have to focus on all these things. Then after this, what are the other important topics in paper 1 from examination point of view, from which the questions are regularly asked? Public policy is one important topic, where you can have regular questions. And another thing that you have to remember here is that this public policy, even if the questions are not directly asked, you can link every question to public policy. As we study, the locus and focus of the discipline of public administration can be found only in public policy analysis. And this is a highly dynamic topic also. Every year, you will have good number of questions from public policy. And the questions of public policy, you can divide them into 3 parts. Questions related to policy formulation, related to implementation, related to policy evaluation. Policy formulation, implementation, and policy evaluation. Again, go back to last 10 years. All the questions will be about only these things. All the questions will be about only these things: formulation, implementation, and evaluation. When you know that the questions are only asked from these topics, then why can't we prepare standard answers for all these things? What are the major problems in policy formulation? Who are the major actors involved in policy formulation? And what are the policy conflicts that you witnessed there? And why policy implementation has been a problematic area for India all the time? And what is the reason why policy evaluation has been ignored mostly in our public policy analysis? And that is what UPSC is focusing on almost on a regular basis. And this question will be asked every year for at least 20 marks. So when you are dividing your paper 1, we can easily find out from where the questions are asked. The best part of public administration is that in spite of all the uncertainties surrounding the UPSC examination, you can easily predict all the questions. Out of 19 questions that you have to attempt, you can easily predict 17 questions very easily. And the UPSC will never go beyond this kind of pattern, standard pattern. Public policies, all the time the questions will be about only these 3 things. You can go through the last 10 years question papers, and that is what you could exactly find out. And all the thinkers, incrementalist paradigm, rationalist paradigm, and then strategic planning paradigm. In policy implementation, you have a authoritative model, participative model, coalition of actors model, endless learning model. In policy evaluation, the different stages in policy evaluation. If your concepts are good, then you can easily write the best of the answers. And what you must remember is that when you are writing answers in public policy, you can link it to the thinkers, you can link it to financial administration, you can link it to personal administration, and finally you can link it to Indian administration. You can link it to Indian administration. One, thinkers, other one is personal administration, and the third one is financial administration, and finally Indian administration. Automatically you are making your answers multidimensional with all kinds of interlinkages. And you have so many examples from Indian administration: education policy, health policy, agriculture policy, and then industrial policy, disaster management policy, internal security policy, foreign policy, and then developmental policies. You can always have so many examples when you are writing answers. The only thing is that you must have a very open-minded approach when writing answers, because UPSC is looking at whether you have understood the essence of the public policy analysis. And how do they know that you have understood it? When you focus more on application-oriented aspects. As we study in public policy, no policies are formed in isolation. Success or failure of one policy depends on the success or failure of other policy. Fiscal policy success depends on monetary policy. If the government is opting for say contractionary fiscal policy, but Reserve Bank of India is opting for expansionary monetary policy, then it will be a failure. So these kind of interlinkages you have to give with relevant examples also. On the other hand, as part of expansionary fiscal policy, the government wants to boost investment to increase the GDP growth rate. But Reserve Bank of India's approach is focused only on controlling inflation. So they keep on increasing the interest rates. Then can you increase the investment levels? No. These are the things, these are the nuances which you have to bring in your answers. That is the reason why this topic requires good knowledge of Indian economy. It requires good knowledge of your education, health, agriculture, rural development, urban development, all these sectors. If you are very good with your GS papers 2, 3 and 4, you will automatically doing very well in public policy also. People find public policy a little bit difficult topic, but I would say that it is one of the most easiest topics, because if you can relate the concepts in public policy to examples from Indian administration, automatically you will be writing the best of the answers also. So this is what public policy, very important topic. Again, as I said, prepare 2-page notes, so that when you go to the examination hall, and when you have a time gap of around 4 or 5 days after the GS papers, and before the optional paper. And all this synopsis that you are preparing right now, you will be using that synopsis and recalling and revising that synopsis at least 10 times, so that nobody can stop you from getting those 280 marks. Then after this, the next important topic in paper 1 is this administrative law and delegated legislation. This is one topic where you have to read very less, and every year again at least 1 or 2 questions are asked every year, and the questions are sickeningly regular. They're asking the same kind of questions, whether delegated legislation in spite of its limitations is necessary. They will say that next year delegated legislation is a necessary evil. Both the questions are same. Both the questions are same. Again, that is the reason why what you have to do, again you have to prepare synopsis, starting with why administrative law, what is administrative law, then comparison between administrative law and rule of law, and what is the criticism of Dicey against administrative law. Is criticism of Dicey against administrative law, is it valid? If not, why? Then what are the reasons for growth of administrative law in India? What is delegated legislation? Why it is called a necessary evil? And what should be done by the government to reduce the negative impact of delegated legislation? These are all the things that you can write, you can prepare your synopsis. Again, none of them are difficult as such. As usual, you can give lot of examples from Indian administration for administrative law and delegated legislation. And you have questions related to administrative tribunals. All tribunals are courts, but not all courts are tribunals. These are all very, very simple, small questions. When you prepare again a synopsis, ready-made synopsis, when you go to the examination hall, you are not looking for answers. You are not looking for content, because you are already preparing the content very easily. Then after this, the next important topic in paper 1 is financial administration. In financial administration, again the thing here is that the same question can be asked in your GS PABAD paper 1 and Indian administration. So you are not studying anything separately as part of financial administration. You are combining 4 topics. Financial administration here in paper 1. Then you have techniques of financial management in paper 2. You have planning in paper 2, and public sector enterprises. All of them deal with economic aspects. And if you look at all these 4 topics, you don't find any public administration here. It is nothing but your Indian economy. There is no public administration here. Even if you want to write so-called public administration answers, nothing will be there. The questions also, if you look at the recent trend of UPSC, the questions are also such that the questions are too generic, very general questions. There is no what you call theoretical aspects here. The questions can be about fiscal policies, expansionary fiscal policies or contractionary fiscal policies. The question can be about monetary policy. The question can be about the conflict between fiscal and monetary policy. Then the questions can be about different forms of budgets. Every year they will be asking one different type of budget, from line item budgets to performance budgeting to planning, programming, budgeting systems, to zero-based budgeting systems, to budgeting for results. Then the latest ones, new performance budgeting, and then green budgeting, gender budgeting, outcome budgets. Again, for all these things, prepare not more than, because the questions are mostly for 10 markers they are asking, or maximum 15 markers. So prepare at least 6-7 points. You know that every year they are asking the questions from all these different types of budgeting systems. Then automatically you will be able to do them very well. And for fiscal and monetary policies, I'm sure you are not going to prepare anything separately from public administration point of view, because whatever that you have studied in your Indian economy should be more than sufficient. Only thing is little bit more conceptual clarity to know about the linkages between fiscal and monetary policies. For example, the questions can be about public borrowings. What are the different impacts of public borrowing on the economy? There will be crowding out of investment, and with increasing public borrowings, you can get into a situation of debt trap. If external borrowings are very high, it can lead to the collapse of economy also. And if the government borrowings are very high, then it can also result in increasing hardening of interest rates, because there will be less amount of money available to the private sector. And if the borrowings are not properly used, it can lead to more situation of debt trap. The government will be forced to borrow fresh to repay the interest on old debts. So if you know these conceptual aspects, automatically again you will be doing very well. This is another thing that you have to remember. If you are good with your Indian economy, automatically you will be doing all these things well. So in paper 1, what are the other important topics that we have? After this, we have this topic, accountability and control. Accountability and control. And what is about accountability and control that we have to look at here? You have legislative, executive and judicial control over administration. And every year the questions will be asked. Last year the question was about judicial control over administration. And again, please remember, the questions in paper 1 can be repeated in Indian administration also. Last year the question they have asked in paper 1 regarding judiciary as part of accountability and control, it should have been asked in your Indian administration as part of judicial activism. But UPSC is not making any kind of artificial differences between paper 1 and paper 2. When UPSC is not making those differences, you should also not unnecessarily make those kind of differences. And that is what you have to remember. If you are good with your entire judiciary, judicial activism, then judicial overreach, and the present status of judiciary in India, what are the different instruments used by the judiciary to control administration through writs, 5 different types of writs. So if you know all those things, automatically you'll be doing very well. And then in accountability and control, there are a very good number of questions that are asked every year. The questions can be about citizen charters. Every year one question will be there. The question will be about right to information. Every year one question will be there. The question can be about this social audits. Every year one question will be there. The question can be about public-private partnerships. Again, every year one question will be there. If you look at last 10 years, public-private partnership was asked at least 5 times in paper 1, 3 times in paper 2. The same question can be repeated. Same question can be repeated. Here in citizen charters, they are asking either in paper 1 or in Indian administration. Last year the question was about citizen charters in paper 1. They have asked RTI in paper 1 as part of accountability and control. So when you are, and then of course regulatory authorities. Regulatory authorities. So every year you are expecting these kind of questions. And then, if you want to, you can add this as part of women and development also, that is part of development administration. Self-help groups and women and development. So what you can do, again for all these topics, prepare a synopsis. Let us assume that they are asking say 15 marker or 20 markers. Prepare a synopsis. In the examination hall, you are going there and just you are writing the answer. Because the question can always be only one thing. Why citizen charters have not been successful? Or what is the significance of citizen charters in realizing the objectives of good governance? What are the recent changes made by the government to RTI that makes RTI ineffective? What are the safeguards that are there in RTI to protect the whistleblowers? And why this social audit in India has not been successful? What is the significance or what are the steps involved in social audit? Every year UPSC is asking the same questions in the last 10 years. And the best part of it is that all these topics are there in your GS paper 2 governance. And all these topics are there in your ethics paper. So if you are preparing one concept, that means it is useful in your PubAd paper 1, Indian administration, polity governance and ethics papers. The same questions can be asked. Whatever the question they are asking in public administration are repeated exactly verbatim in GS paper 2 and ethics papers. This is where you have to maximize your potential. Why? Because public administration students have the opportunity to score maximum marks in GS paper 2 and ethics papers. If you are very good with all these concepts, with focus on administrative perspective, which those who are studying from GS point of view can never have, automatically your answers will be far better, superior quality compared to others. And that is the reason why if you look at the last 10 years also, those who are getting very good marks in public administration invariably are getting very good marks in paper 2 and paper 4. And you have to maximize your potential there. And these concepts are very important. These are all very important. Then the next topic in our paper 1 point of view is this personal administration. Again, you are not studying this topic independently. You are covering, there are 4 topics here simultaneously. You are covering 4 topics. What are the topics that you are covering here? Personal administration in paper 1. Then techniques of administrative improvement in paper 1. Then civil services in India in paper 2. And administrative reform since independence. Administrative reforms since independence. All these 4 topics you are studying it together, because you don't want to unnecessarily waste time on studying these topics independently. All of them are interrelated. You can see that the questions in personal administration and civil services are exactly the same. Whether it is in paper 1 or in Indian administration, they are asking the same questions. They are asking the same questions about recruitment. They are asking the same questions about training. They are asking the same questions about the performance evaluation. They are asking the same questions about the promotions. They are asking the same questions about employee relations. They are asking the same questions about code of conduct and code of ethics. They are asking the same questions about discipline. And they are asking the same questions about good governance initiatives. The only thing here is that if at all you are writing in paper 1, you can give examples from the practices of other countries to make your answer slightly different from Indian administration. Otherwise, you are writing the same answers, because at the end of the day, focus should be on giving more examples from Indian administration. How does it really matter? What kind of a recruitment system is there in Africa? You are not preparing for African Public Service Commission, so you are not concerned. So you have to talk about the weaknesses of recruitment system in India. And for all these things, the second year's report on personal administration, which is very important for us, personal administration, and second year's report on ethics in governance. They are very important. And then the latest economic survey, if you happen to see that, in the latest economic survey, there are at least 3-4 pages about Mission Karmayogi. Wherein they had spoken about all the problems with our civil services in India. When you have ready-made study material there, why do you have to worry? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already there. Similarly, when you have ready-made study material there, your job is only to read it, understand it, and repeat the same. Because this latest economic survey had come out with a very extensive analysis of the major problems faced by bureaucracy in India, from recruitment to removal, and it has explained all of them in a very simple language, and it has provided solutions also through Mission Karmyogi. So if you are reading that, that will be good for all these 4 topics. That will be good for your governance, civil services topic in governance. That will be good for your entire ethics paper. 3 pages covering an extensive part of your entire syllabus. Just focus on those things, because they had pinpointed what are the major weaknesses in the functioning of our bureaucracy. This is what you have to do, these 4 topics. And then remember all the recommendations of second ERC, from recruitment to removal. Not many, maximum 4 or 5, because you are writing not more than because you have to write about the problems, you have to write about the structures, you have to write about the why aspect of the question, and finally you are coming to the solutions. So you are not writing more than 5-6 solutions. Recruitment, 5-6 solutions. Training, 5-6 solutions. And then employer-employee relations, 5-6 solutions. Grievance redressal mechanisms, 5-6 solutions. Then administrative tribunals, 4-5 solutions. Then promotions, again 5-6 solutions. Performance evaluation, reports of various committees, 5-6 solutions. And politicization of civil services, again 5-6 solutions. You have to remember those 5-6 solutions, and they are not difficult also. They are not at all difficult. Last year itself, in paper 1 and paper 2, from these topics only, they had given 6 questions. That means out of 500 marks, 100 marks are only from this topic. And you can answer all of them very easily. You can answer all of them very easily. I am talking about only public administration. I am not including GS. If you include governance and ethics papers, it will go to at least 200 marks. Why do you want to lose? This is the heart of your entire preparation, these 4 topics. Because here it includes e-governance, networking governance, multi-actor paradigm model. You are talking about all the things. You are talking about MIS, PERT, CPM, organization and methods, organization and development. So if you look at the questions that were asked in both governance and ethics papers combined together, this is a gold mine for you. As I mentioned last year, they have asked a question in our ethics paper about how e-governance can help in realizing the objectives of good governance. If you have the necessary facts, that's more than enough. Economic survey will give you all those facts. All the facts are given by economic survey. Last year's economic survey had given extensively about DPI, digital public infrastructure, which was asked in our PubAd paper 1 for 20 marks. That is the reason why economic survey becomes very important. DPI, digital public infrastructure. So make sure that you are getting the crux of all those things. This year economic survey also, I have marked the important pages also. I'll be giving you those pages also. And I will also have prepared a synopsis of this economic survey, around 20 pages, where all these things are briefly mentioned. You can go through that, and that will be extremely useful enough, not only for our public administration, for your ethics paper, for your governance, more importantly for your Indian economy. And this is what again you have to look at, because UPSC preparation is all about optimization. That means you are studying minimum sources and maximizing your potential. That is what you have to do here. So for paper 1, this is what you are looking at. All the, in paper 1 we have 12 chapters. And this is what you will be doing for all these chapters in paper 1. Right, from introduction. And then in paper 1, UPSC is focusing a good number of questions from introduction topic. Every year they'll give one definition related to public administration. every year. And you don't have to prepare anything else for that question, because the answer is always there in the question itself, right? And they are also focusing on these things like NPA, NPM, good governance. They are asking questions. Then they can ask questions about NPG, new public governance, NPG, and they are asking questions about NPS, new public service approach, and they are also asking questions about networking governance. They are also asking questions from networking governance. Again, what you are doing here, preparing a brief synopsis of not more than 100 words for all these topics. Again, in the last 10 years, if you look at it, they are asking only questions from these topics. Or they will ask questions about Wilson, Woodrow Wilson. Alternative years, they are asking questions about Woodrow Wilson. So you can prepare a brief synopsis of all these concepts, so that at the end of the day, your entire paper 1 notes will not be more than 25 pages. It will not be more than 25 pages. It will not be more than. And then one more important topic in paper 1 is development dynamics. And in this development dynamics, the questions are mostly about impact of globalization on administration. The questions will be about state versus market debate. State versus market debate. And the questions will be about women and development. Last year also, in paper 1, they have asked 15 marks question about women and development. 15 marks. Again, every year the questions will always be asked about these topics. And what you have to remember is that when you are writing answers for this topic, you have to interlink development dynamics with the public policy, with the financial administration, with the Indian administration. Interlink. And of course, because development administration and administrative development are interlinked, you must link it to personal administration also. When you interlink all these things, automatically you will be writing best of the answers. You will be writing best of the answers. That is what basically we talk about Rick's systems approach. Interlinking all that's what we call it as ecological approach also. So this is what you have to do as far as paper 1 is concerned. As I said, at the end of the day, your entire paper 1 notes should not be more than 25 pages. Not more than 25 pages. With a very simple explanation, with a lot of conceptual clarity, with interlinkages, with examples from Indian administration. Everything you have to prepare ready-made examples from Indian administration. This is what you have to do. Then proceeding further, what about the Indian administration part, paper 2? If you have any doubts about paper 1, you can ask. Then I can proceed to paper 2, Indian administration. Regarding the sources, regarding the concepts, you can ask. See, for thinkers, Prasad and Prasad is fine. The problem with Mohit Bhattacharya is that it has a very good conceptual clarity, but only difficulty is he has written in a style which is complicated. At this point of time, I don't think you have sufficient time to read, to understand, and to reproduce. You don't require, because UPSC is not focusing too much on theoretical aspects. The focus is always on analytical aspects. So for thinkers, if you are reading Prasad and Prasad, and with the focus more on linking them to Indian administration, that should be fine. Yes. See, this is what the question that is repeatedly asked. If you are writing answers in paper 1, how can you differentiate it from Indian administration answers? For example, Syrian charters. Right? So, in paper 1, you can start with a little bit of a conceptual aspect of Syrian charters. So, what is the conceptual aspects of Syrian charters? Pardon? Not that one. Conceptual means why Syrian charters? Traditional bureaucracies, which are characterized by Weberian norms, have failed to bring about a much needed transformation in the quality of service delivery mechanisms because of goal displacement. Goal displacement here, one of the criticisms against Weberian bureaucracy is the rules and regulations are expected to be the means or instruments, but over a period of time they had become an end in themselves. So you are giving the introduction to Syrian charters from theoretical perspective, Max Weber. Whereas in Indian administration, you can directly talk about the need to improve the quality of service delivery mechanisms without mentioning Max Weber. That is what only thing. That means in paper 1, you are trying to bring in the thinker who can be connected to that particular concept. That is what. And then after that you can bring in Fredericks. Ricks has said that success of development administration depends on administrative development. Administrative development means improving the capabilities. And that is where Syrian charters can be made successful, by focusing on providing training to bureaucracy, so that they can shift their emphasis from rule orientation to outcome orientation, by imparting necessary skills, and by focusing on inculcating the necessary values, democratic values. So whenever you are writing in paper 1, you can always bring in the concerned thinker, and that is where you can easily bluff the examiner, saying that I have so much of knowledge about the thinkers. In reality, it is not required at all, but you are doing a very good job of bluffing the examiner, and you will definitely get very good marks. Examiner will believe that you have so much of in-depth knowledge about the thinkers, and you are using their concepts to explain analytical aspects of Indian administration also. That is what. Obviously, in Indian administration, what is the difference between writing answers in paper 1 and Indian administration? In paper 1, you are starting with the conceptual aspects given by the thinkers, later linking it to Indian administration examples. In paper 2, you are starting with Indian administration examples and then linking them to. At the end of the day, you are writing the same answer. And when you are writing the same answer in ethics paper, Syrian charters, it is there in ethics paper also, it is there in our governance also. What you are doing, you are giving the concepts of Max Weber without mentioning the name of Weber. That means you are writing Syrian charters why. Development administration in India has been a failure because of goal displacement in the functioning of our bureaucracy. You become Weber. You are not giving any acknowledgement to Max Weber. That is what you are doing. In ethics paper, the objective is about Syrian empowerment. Weberian bureaucracy, again in ethics also Max Weber is there. Weberian bureaucracy, with its colonial attitudes, has failed to realize the objectives of citizen empowerment. That is the reason why Citizen Charter is one of the instruments to realize the objectives of citizen empowerment. At the end of the day, you are writing the same answer, but you are making that cosmetic changes, so that if a same person is evaluating your 4 answers, he would feel that you have written different answers. That is the only difference. Every topic, that is what? Right to information. When you are writing about right to information, one of the important features of Weberian bureaucracy is secrecy. Weberian bureaucracy, one of the important features is secrecy. Max Weber has said that bureaucracy must be working in a highly secretive environment because its functioning should not be impacted by other systems. Then only they can efficiently implement the laws, rules and regulations. But over a period of time, this secrecy, as we study, what we call it as bureaupathology. Bureaupathology means the negative consequences of the functioning of bureaucracy. This secrecy over a period of time has only resulted in unwanted consequences in the form of lack of accountability and high levels of corruption. And that is the reason why we need transparency in administration. So I am writing answer about RTA, but I am linking it to the thinker. And that is what you have to do in paper 1. That is what you have to do. That's what I am saying. And when you are writing in GS goal displacement, in brackets explain what it is. That means, after writing goal displacement, in brackets you say that bureaucracy is giving more importance to implementing rules and regulations than realizing outcomes. That is the reason why Citizen Charter had come as a solution to make bureaucracy outcome oriented than rule oriented. Automatically, that's what I said. You are shamelessly using knowledge of public administration in general studies, and that is where in ethics paper you will be scoring 140 marks. Last year average score in ethics paper was around 80-85 marks. One of our students, she scored 135 marks. Why? Written completely public administration answers. In the last 10 years, again you see, those of our students who got very good marks in public administration invariably scored very good marks in ethics. And they have this fear that they should not be writing public administration answers in ethics paper. If you are not writing public administration answer in ethics paper, you will be writing Spanish or Latin answers. Ethics is all about administration. Then why are you shy of not writing administration answers? When you have the advantage, why don't you use that advantage? That is what. In governance and polity also, you are writing in-depth administrative answers. Except that you are not mentioning the name of the thinker. For example, Rick's systems approach. Corruption is systemic and systematic in nature. That means corruption is because of the functioning of the political system, economic system, administrative system, social and cultural systems. All of them combined together makes corruption systematic in nature. That is what Rick's talks about. Ecological approach. Why can't you use this kind of your public administration knowledge in your GS answers? Similarly, when you are writing about Gram Sabhas, you can use the knowledge of Douglas McGregor or MP Foley, who have spoken about participative management. Theory why? What a theory way says? People are intelligent, capable and responsible. Give them power. And that is what exactly we talk about in Gram Sabhas. So, take the concept and write in your GS answers. Automatically you are adding completely a different new dimension to your answers, because of which you will be scoring very good marks compared to others. And this is what you have to remember. Unless and until you are scoring at least 130 marks in GS paper 2 and ethics papers, you are not eligible to write public administration. It is as simple as that one. When you have so much of in-depth knowledge, practical about all aspects of governance, why can't you use them? In ethics case studies, for example, In civil services reforms, we talk about why politicization of civil services is there, because we have only ex post accountability. And the second ERC says that this ex post accountability should be replaced with ex ante accountability. For half the ethics case studies give the same solution. Nobody will be writing this solution. Automatically you will be getting 140 marks. That is what I keep on saying. You have to use your knowledge of public administration extensively in both polity and governance papers. And again, if you come back to polity paper, in GS polity, again last year average score was only 85 marks. What is the reason why people are not getting marks? In the name of polity, they read only constitution and a little bit of law, but they never study polity. And polity you'll be studying in your Indian administration, and you use the knowledge of Indian administration. Last year there was a question in polity about the finances of urban local bodies. The question was asked previous last year in our Indian administration for 20 marks. And in your polity, I'm sure none of the polity notes anywhere else in the country you find that information. And long time back we studied in a public administration that urban local bodies in India suffer from finances. We say that they require at least 1 lakh crores of rupees to improve urban infrastructure, and they don't have any finances. And we study at least 10 different solutions how to augment the finances of urban local bodies. Why can't you use that information? And that is the reason why you have to get maximum marks there. Similarly, if the question is about committees of parliament, you'll be studying in depth about in Indian administration about the reasons for failure of committee systems. In polity, you'll be studying about what are those committees, but you don't analyze the reasons for failure of committees, which you will be studying in your Indian administration. If you are not getting that 130 marks in polity governance paper, that means you are a criminal. It is as simple as that one. And you have to extensively utilize your knowledge. And all governance questions are directly picked up from public administration papers. So why are you not getting marks there? Because people have this misconception that in GS papers they have to write different answers. That means they have to write answers in Latin, Greek and Spanish. Whatever you are writing in public administration, reproduce them, including spelling mistakes. Then you will automatically get marks. That is the reason why, coming to paper 2, you are not studying anything separately for paper 2. If you are good with your Indian economy, if you are good with your internal security, if you are good with your disaster management, if you are good with your Indian polity, your paper 2 is over. If you are good with your ethics, your paper 2 is over. And you have to be very good with current events. And every year UPSC is asking the same questions. In Indian administration, if you look at it, every year one question will always be about failure of police reforms in India. Every year they have to ask the same question. In spite of the Supreme Court judgment, police reforms in India have not been implemented. Why? And Supreme Court judgment had come in 2006. And in the last 18 years, if you look at Indian administration paper, every year the same question is asked. When you know that they are asking the same kind of questions, why can't you prepare very structured answers? That is what UPSC preparation is all about. So that when you go to the examination hall, you are writing the best of the answers with the relevant facts and with the relevant recommendations from various committees. That is what you have to do. And now let us come to Indian administration, what you are going to do. So let us see what are the topics in Indian administration and how you are going to work on those topics. So it starts with say evaluation of Indian administration. Evaluation of Indian administration. Historical evaluation of Indian administration. Now coming back here, we have here three important concepts. One, Kautilya's Arthashastra, then Mughal administration, and third one is impact of British rule. And when you are studying Kautilya, he is a very important philosopher for your ethics paper also. In ethics also Kautilya was asked. So when you are studying Kautilya, don't read only Kautilya from Indian administration or historical evolution of Indian administration. Read Kautilya as a political philosopher. Kautilya's opinion on international relations, that was asked last year in your ethics paper, and without mentioning the name of Kautilya. So that is the reason why make sure that you are studying from the concept point of view, not from the subject point of view. So that the moment the question is asked, either in your ethics paper or governance paper or anywhere else, you are able to bring in that thinker without mentioning the name of the thinker. The thought can be used. That is what you have to do. And Mughal administration, every alternative year they are asking one question, maybe 10 marks. The questions will be always centering around only one topic. It is about centralized despotism. And 2 years back they have asked 3 years back they have asked some different question. Mughal administration contained Indian and extra Indian elements, Arabic and Persian elements. But again, these are all the small things which you will be studying also anyway. And impact of British rule on Indian administration is the entire syllabus itself, right from secretariat administration to revenue administration to civil services to district administration to local self-governments to federalism and everything else. So you are not studying anything separately for it. And then when you take the second chapter in our Indian administration, it is about constitutionalism, political culture, philosophical and constitutional framework of our government, value premises of our constitution, bureaucracy, democracy, and bureaucracy and development. Again, all these topics are there anyway in your polity as well as ethics papers. For example, political culture is there in your ethics paper in chapter 2. There is a topic called moral and political attitudes. Political attitudes is nothing but political culture. So this is where you must make sure that you are using your in-depth knowledge of a public administration to write best answers in ethics papers. Almond and Verba have said that the political culture of a country is determined by three important factors: emotions and sentiments, values or ideologies, cognitions. So when you are writing answers in your ethics paper, use these concepts. That is where you have to maximize your potential of a public administration. Please remember, when you are studying for public administration, simultaneously you are also studying for at least 600-700 marks of your general studies papers. For example, in public administration you will be studying about role of media. That is there in your paper 1, accountability and control topic. And this media was asked for 125 marks in your general essay. So that is where again you have to maximize your potential. And then constitutionalism. For almost every question, you can start your answer with only constitutionalism. In polity, every question you can start with constitutionalism. If you are writing about fundamental rights, you are writing about constitutionalism. You are writing about the functioning of judiciary, again you are writing about constitutionalism. You are writing about limiting the powers of governor, again you are writing about constitutionalism. If you are writing about fundamental rights in a GS paper, paper 2, polity, again you are writing about constitutionalism. So entire syllabus can be defined with one single term, constitutionalism. And you are using this word constitutionalism in your entire preparation, entire answer writing also. Once you understand this, the different dimensions of constitutionalism, you are going to write best of the answers. And whenever it is required, you are strategically using this word constitutionalism to make your answers look more analytical. Whether it is a polity governance or ethics or even of course our Indian administration. And this bureaucracy, democracy and bureaucracy development, it is there in your entire ethics paper only. So that is where you have to be maximizing your potential. This bureaucracy is considered to be one of the most important impediments to ensure rapid growth and development in the country. Why? Colonial structures, colonial attitudes, and high levels of secrecy, complicated rules and regulations, trained incapacity, goal displacement. You write all of them. That means once you are thorough with Weberian bureaucracy, you are playing literally with all the questions, because you are using all the features of Weberian bureaucracy to write excellent answers. That is what you have to remember. Then you have this topic, union government and administration. And if you look at this topic, union government and administration, what can you say? If you look at this topic, union government and administration, what you can say here is that all these topics from this chapter are there in your polity governance papers. Everything: legislature, executive, judiciary, intra-governmental relations. And then in governance, you have ministries and departments, line agencies, staff ordinations, everything is there. Only thing here is that in Indian administration, you are going in depth into all those topics, whereas in polity, you are studying only those topics from factual perspective, because Lakshmikant gives mostly factual information, which is necessary from your prelims perspective, but not at all sufficient from your mains perspective. For example, when you are talking about declining standards of Indian Parliament, you are talking about so many reasons. Politicization of the office of the speaker. The number of parliament is meeting every year has come down from say 125, 150 days to less than 50 days. Bills are passed without any discussion or debate on the floor of the house. And the country is also witnessing ordinance Raj. And for some period of time, in order to avoid Rajya Sabha scrutiny, most of the bills were introduced as money bills. And there was misuse of privileges of members of parliament. And office of profit provisions are also again misused. And then committee system has been a failure. And passing a budget is mostly done through what we call guillotines. So in Indian administration, you are studying all these things in a more analytical manner, and you have to use that analytical aspects of Indian administration to write best answers in GS paper 2. And this is where again I keep on saying, if you are not getting good marks in polity governance paper, it is a crime, because in none of the polity classes you will be taught about these things in an in-depth manner. And this is where you have to be using your in-depth knowledge of Indian administration. Similarly, in Indian administration, you are focusing a little bit more on political aspects, making a comparison between Indian Prime Minister and British Prime Minister. Last year the question that they have asked in Indian administration, and the same question was repeated in your polity governance paper in the form of making comparison between Indian and British parliamentary democracies. Right? Same question. And if you can use your knowledge of Indian administration, you will be writing best of the answers in polity governance paper. That is what you have to do. Why Indian Prime Minister is more powerful than a British Prime Minister? Why Indian Prime Minister is more powerful than a British Prime Minister? I think last year the question was asked in our Indian administration. Why Indian Prime Minister is considered more powerful than a British Prime Minister? In United Kingdom, there are so many reasons. In United Kingdom, Prime Minister is the primus inter pares, first among the equals. In India, this is not the case. Prime Minister is the leader of the government. Prime Minister has absolute power to appoint ministers and allocate portfolios to them, and also remove them when he is not satisfied with their performance. Next, you have to bring in risks here. India is a prismatic society that has structures of the developed countries, but the functioning of these structures is influenced by fused societies' attitudes. In India, it is charismatic leadership with very less inner party democracy that makes Prime Minister extremely powerful. On the other hand, it is not the case with United Kingdom. The Prime Minister is also one of the ordinary members of the party who is being elected by party MPs. In India, the Prime Minister is not elected by the party MPs. Prime Minister is the leader of the party, and there is no competition to Prime Minister. This is another reason. Next, in United Kingdom, for passing of the bills on the floor of the House, that is where you are talking about British and Indian parliamentary democracies. In United Kingdom, the political parties cannot issue whips. So members of parliament will be voting according to their conscience. In India, that is not the case. Prime ministers have a iron grip over the party and their MPs. Members cannot imagine voting against their own political party on the floor of the House. There is no question of voting according to their conscience. So what happens in Indian parliamentary system? Parliament becomes an extension of executive. And when a charismatic leader becomes the Prime Minister, automatically he can run the government in a more autocratic manner compared to British parliamentary democracies. Next, in India, political culture is mostly influenced by emotions and sentiments. It is either charismatic leadership, or it is emotional factors like religion or caste or region or language that decide electoral outcomes, but not the performance. On the other hand, in countries like United Kingdom, it is mostly depends on cognitions. People are aware about their rights, and that is the reason why they can easily make their governments accountable. That is the reason why whenever the societies are underdeveloped, the leadership can always become more powerful, because the relation between the government and the citizens is what is called a two-person zero-sum game. So when you are writing answers in your polity, you have to write about all these things which nobody from the general studies polity background will be able to write all these kind of answers. That is where you have to be getting good marks. These are the differences between Indian and British parliamentary democracies. Prime Minister is not primus inter pares in UK, in India. He is the leader, and the rest of the council of ministers are not equals. That is where it is. And so when you are writing answers, as I keep on saying, you must make sure that you are bringing all your knowledge of a public administration in writing best answers in GS paper 2. That is the reason why if you are good with the union government, legislature and the judiciary. Again, judiciary, we study more in depth about the functioning of judiciary. In polity, you'll be studying about Supreme Court, High Courts, how the judges are appointed, how they are removed, or all those kind of things, with little less emphasis on analytical aspects of the functioning of judiciary. You'll be studying in our Indian administration about All India Judicial Services. You'll be studying about reasons for judicial activism. You'll be studying about how judicial activism has resulted in judicial overreach. And you'll be studying about how it is causing damage to constitutionalism, the balance of power. And when you are writing answers in your polity, you are bringing in all those concepts. You'll be studying about how public interest litigation has been transformed into a private interest litigation, profit interest litigation, personal interest litigation. You have to bring in all those things in your answers in your GS polity paper. And that is the reason why this topic is very important, because from this topic only, in Indian administration you have at least minimum 60-70 marks. In polity governance paper, at least 4 questions will be there. 150 marks, one topic. Why do you want to lose? And that is what you have to do. And you have to make sure that when you are writing answers in polity, you are going beyond Lakshmikant. You are going beyond the articles of the constitution. and you are focusing more on analytical aspects, which is your forte when it comes to Indian administration. Then then the next topic is basically state government and administration. State government and administration. And what are you talking about here as part of state government and administration? In state government and administration, you are basically talking about union state relations, governor, and then chief secretary, chief minister, and other things. Again, very good number of questions are asked in both polity governance and our Indian administration papers. This year also, you can be sure of at least 2-3 questions in polity paper only from this topic. You will have questions about the discretionary powers of governor, because we have seen so many Supreme Court judgments in the recent times. Supreme Court judgment in the case of Maharashtra regarding this imposition of Article 356 with the Thackeray government, and the Supreme Court judgment regarding the passing of bills or giving assent to the bills by state governors. There is a lot of controversy in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and in Punjab, then Telangana, and of course a lot of controversy in Bengal. So you are definitely having questions about governors, and the same questions can be there in both your Indian administration and polity governance papers. That means you are studying one topic and you are getting double the number of questions, and this is where you have to maximize your potential. And you have questions can be about Article 356 and misuse of Article 356. It can be asked again in both polity governance and Indian administration papers. And then of course center-state relations, a very favorite topic, center-state relations. And I won't be surprised if this is not asked for your general essay also, because of the fact that we are witnessing so many conflicts between the center and state relations, union state relations. So if you are preparing very good notes with first the provisions of the Constitution, articles, second the relevant Supreme Court judgments, third the recommendations of various committees, fourth all current events related to that particular aspect. For example, yesterday Karnataka state governor has given permission to prosecute the chief minister. What are the relevant provisions of the Constitution that gives powers to the governor? And what are the relevant Supreme Court judgments? The question can be asked both in your polity governance as well as in our Indian administration. So if you can prepare from this point of view, automatically you will be getting very good marks. And that is the reason why this becomes very important. For example, union state financial relations, very important topic. And I won't be surprised if it is not asked in your GS paper 2 this year, financial relations, especially in the context of implementation of GST. Because the state governments, especially ruled by the opposition parties, are saying that the union government is discriminating against them. Karnataka has said that they were not given disaster relief. Tamil Nadu has called our Prime Minister 28% Prime Minister. 28% Prime Minister means Tamil Nadu is contributing 100 rupees to the central government in the form of taxes. In return, they were only getting 28 rupees. Equity in financial relations, equity versus efficiency. What are the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission here, especially of the southern states, who have complained that they have been penalized for their performance? So these are all burning topics, and you have to be very thorough. Center state, one, financial relations, second, administrative relations, third, legislative relations. The tendency of the central government to pass laws on subjects in the state list. And again, what are the controversies related to them? If you prepare, that means you are preparing simultaneously for both polity governance and ethics, our Indian administration. In polity governance, we have 10 questions that are asked by UPSC from polity. 10 questions. Out of these 10 questions, around 2 to 3 questions are from basic aspects of constitution, fundamental rights and directive principles. Remaining questions are from these topics: union government, state government, then local self-governments, constitutional bodies and statutory bodies, all of them. And you will be studying all of them in a more detailed manner. For example, in our Indian administration, the questions were asked about credibility of our election commission, the tendency of the government to appoint members who are loyal to the central government as members of election commission. That is where you talk about electoral reforms in recruitment of members to election commission. And this year Supreme Court had come out with the judgment also. So you can expect those questions in both the polity governance as well as our Indian administration papers. In the last few years, if you look at it, in Indian administration, most of the questions from this Indian administration are questions that can be asked in any of the GS papers. That is the reason why if you are good with your GS, automatically you will be doing very well here. And more importantly, if you are doing very well here because of your additional knowledge that you have gained in Indian administration, you will definitely be doing very well in polity governance papers. And then and what are the other important topics? You have rural development, you have urban development, then you have district administration, you have rural development, you have urban development, and you have district administration. Again, if you look at it, what are the questions that UPSC is giving in our Indian administration are repeated next year in our polity governance papers. Next year in polity governance papers. As I said, last year in your polity governance, the question was about finances of urban local bodies. That was asked in our Indian administration previously. So what you have to do is that take last 7-8 years of Indian administration papers, revise them fully, so that you are preparing well for your polity governance also. For example, a question was asked in our Indian administration about a Gram Sabha. Why Gram Sabha has failed as an institution of direct democracy. The same question was repeated. Exactly the same question was repeated in your polity governance paper. And when your polity, you will study only about 73rd amendment, but you will not study about in depth why Gram Sabha has been a failure. But you will be studying those things in depth in our Indian administration. And that is where again you have to get good marks. For example, the finances of urban local bodies or the district planning commission. These are all the things which you will be studying in depth. And this is where you have to maximize your potential in polity governance paper. And they are mostly, every year they are asking questions from very specific topics, specific areas. In urban development, the questions will be about questions about the finances, institutions, and then the questions about most of these urban development schemes, smart cities, or Amrut, or Shyam Prasad Mukherjee urban mission. Please remember, all these questions were asked first in Indian administration. The same questions were repeated later in your paper 1 of GS as well as in polity governance papers. So what you have to do for these topics is you have to be a little bit more current oriented. Last year also, UPSC is focusing mostly on various welfare schemes, and you have to be little bit what you call have a good knowledge about the facts related to various schemes. Identify the flagship schemes. It can be about MGNREGA. It can be about PMAY. It can be about PMJAY. It can be about PMJAY. It can be about smart cities. It can be about there's a Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, PMJKAY, and it can be about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, one of the few successes of the present government. It can be about Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has been extended to Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Under this Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, we have a PM Shri to improve the conditions of the schools. So be thorough about all these schemes. In the last year, in our Indian administration, at least 4 questions were about only these schemes. Identify the schemes related to education, employment, enough food, agriculture, because in our Indian administration they are asking about agriculture also, please remember. The questions that can be purely asked should be purely asked in your GS paper 3 Indian economy, they are asking. Then about housing, then about rural development as such, then about urban development. Because this is necessary for both your GS paper 1, 2, 3 and Indian administration. So prepare a list of important schemes which you must have studied for your prelims also. Because this year in your prelims, at least 6 questions from only these schemes. And prepare a brief synopsis, so that if the questions are asked, completely factual questions are asked, you need to have those facts at your disposal. That is what you have to remember. Prepare a brief synopsis, and that is what is preparation. And this is important not only for your Indian administration, more for your GS paper 1 as part of social issues, GS paper 2 as part of governance, and GS paper 3 as part of economy and disaster management. So you prepare a brief synopsis about all these schemes, and that will be helpful for you in your Indian administration also. Especially nowadays, you can see in urban areas in our country facing so many problems, especially issues related to urban infrastructure, urban flooding, then disaster management, and then increasing population, crime against women. These are all the issues, and you will definitely expect these questions in Indian administration. Nowadays UPSC is not restricting itself to questions that are purely called Indian administration questions. They are asking mostly the questions that are ideally asked in your general studies papers. So prepare in a brief synopsis about all these things. Increasing urban pollution, then environmental degradation, then heat islands that are created in urban areas, urban flooding, issues related to urban unemployment, issues related to protection of women, especially working women in urban areas. Prepare a brief what are the measures taken by the government, especially the recent schemes that are launched by the government, so that you are writing again better answers. Then we have a few more topics that are left in Indian administration, like the issue areas. Last year also the question was asked about this coalition governments, and this year UPSC also has a clairvoyance. They could predict that this year at the central level we have a coalition government. So that is the reason why in last year itself we had one question about coalition governments in our Indian administration. This year you can expect the questions not only in our Indian administration but also in polity paper about the impact of coalition governments on parliamentary democracy, on the functioning of the Prime Minister, on center-state relations, on policy formulation and implementation. So definitely as part of issue areas you can expect questions related to coalition governments. And every year in our Indian administration one question will always be asked about ethics in civil services, values in public services. It can be questions about code of conduct or code of ethics, which is what you will be studying extensively in your ethics paper also. And disaster management, again every year good number of questions are asked. Again, when you are preparing disaster management, make sure that you are preparing both from your GS paper 3 and Indian administration point of view. How to make sure that in your GS paper 3 your answers are superior to others. In GS paper 3 in disaster management, which is being mostly taught by geography teachers, they simply don't know anything about administrative aspects of disaster management. At the end of the day, disaster management is part of administration. So if you can bring in your knowledge of administration to write best answers for disaster management in GS paper 3, then automatically you will be getting good marks. Last year average score in GS paper 3 was only 75 marks. Why? Because again people have very limited knowledge. Last year questions on disaster management are mostly from administrative perspective. So when you are studying for this topic disaster management, you are covering all the dimensions: geographical dimension, environmental dimension, economic dimension, administrative dimension, political dimension. You are making sure that you are covering all these dimensions while writing answers for disaster management. And when you are studying in public administration, make sure that you are covering all these dimensions. For example, this year the question can be about this cloud burst. The question can be about landslides. The question can be about floods. The questions can be about these man-made disasters like forest fires. That is what they are asking in your GS paper 3. They will not be going beyond that. In public administration, we are looking at all these things from administrative and political perspectives and economic perspectives. In GS, you are looking these things from geographical and environmental perspectives. And when you are writing answers, whether it is in Indian administration or in a GS paper 3, you are combining all these perspectives. That is where in your GS paper 3 you will be scoring 120 marks. That is where you identify all the major disasters that have taken place in the country in the last 1 year and prepare a synopsis covering all these dimensions. Recently, if you happen to read newspapers, the government has introduced changes to NDMA. Have you seen those changes? What are changes the government has planning to introduce to NDMA, National Disaster Management Act? Be careful. Current events are very important. It has come in the newspapers also in the last 1 week or so. So be careful, and you have to inculcate all those changes in your answers. Yeah. Exactly, that is what I am saying. For example, you are writing about floods, in your GS paper 3, flood management, in urban flooding. And how do you use your knowledge of public administration? The Smart Cities program that was launched by the Government of India in 2015 has included disaster management as an integral part of the Smart Cities program, of which flood control is also one of the aspects. But none of the cities which are selected for the Smart Cities program have come out with any concrete long-term sustainable plans regarding how they are going to manage the floods, especially in urban areas. On the other hand, what most of the urban local self-governments have done, most of these urban local self-governments, due to corruption and due to politicization, they have deliberately filled in all those water bodies, and there they had given permission for the real estate sector to construct houses. So there is no way that this flood water can be going into, and when it is there, it results in urban flooding. He gave the example here. In 1950s in Chennai, there were more than 15,000 water bodies, ponds, lakes, and other smaller water bodies. 2024, there are less than 1,500. And the Chennai International Airport is constructed on water. And the Chennai, this software city in Chennai, all these where software companies are located, it was also a small water body in 1990s. And the government had given permission for the real estate shocks. That is very administrative aspects you are talking about. So that is where you have to interlink everything. And that is the reason why all these cities are witnessing urban flooding. And give the example here, why this Kerala landslides? Because of the cloud burst. Why this cloud burst? Because of environmental degradation. Why environmental degradation? Administrative factors. This Madhav Gadgil committee has recommended in 2011 that 75% of this Kerala hilly areas should be declared as ecologically sensitive areas. That means there should not be any construction, there should not be any rubber plantation, there should not be any mining activities, there should not be any tourism related activities, and there should not be any hydroelectric power projects. But no state government is willing to listen to them, and these kind of disasters are waiting to happen. So you have to bring in all these political and administrative dimensions in your GS paper 3 answers. That is where you will be getting good marks, and that is where you are really using your knowledge of public administration there. Why disaster management in India is a failure? It is a failure because disaster management is never considered as an issue that will influence electoral outcomes. Bringing this administrative dimension in your GS answers. It is never considered an issue that will determine electoral outcomes. For example, during the corona crisis, so many dead bodies were floating in the river Ganges. But when the people voted next year in elections to assembly, they never considered that as an issue. And another important reason here is that people have very short memory. For example, what happened in Delhi 3 weeks back here, people have already forgotten. In India, we are a country that moves from one disaster to another disaster. After what happened in Delhi, then we have moved on to Kerala, landslides. From there, we have moved on to, unfortunately, what happened in Calcutta. So you are moving from one disaster to another disaster. And people also have this very short-term memory. That is the reason why political parties always pay lip service. So when you are writing answers in GS paper 3, you are bringing these administrative and political dimensions. That is where you will be getting very good marks. And that is the reason why your knowledge of these administrative aspects should be used extensively in your GS paper 3. Automatically you will be scoring 130 marks there. Similarly, after disaster management, you have corruption citizen administration interface. And this corruption you will be studying extensively in public administration, both in paper 1 and Indian administration. And this is corruption is the essence of your entire ethics paper also. So you have to use your in-depth knowledge of how corruption takes place in the administration, in both public administration, polity governance and ethics papers. And that is where you are integrating all of them. We say that one of the important reasons why corruption is there because of absence of values. But this denigration of values, is it the result of corruption or is it the cause of corruption? Is it the cause or the effect of corruption? That is what UPSC is asking in both our public administration as well as in ethics papers. It is both, because it is cyclical. Because of corruption there will be denigration of values. Because of denigration of values there will be corruption. So if you have this kind of conceptual clarity, you will be writing very good answers. These are all issue areas in public administration. And another topic, we have this topic called law and order administration. Again, every year they are asking the same questions. The questions are repeated in your internal security as well as in public administration also, Indian administration. The questions can be about failure to implement police reforms. The questions can be about these legislations like AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The questions can be about UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The questions can be about the conflict between the central and state governments in terms of law and order, whether law and order should be shifted from state list to the concurrent list. The questions can be about politicization of our police forces. So UPSC is asking, the questions can be about communalism, caste-based conflicts, regionalism, language-based conflicts. So the questions are again completely what you call expected on expected lines. And it is not at all that much difficult to predict these questions also, because UPSC is every year repeating the same questions. So for this Indian administration, what we must remember here is that just go through the questions of last 6-7 years of UPSC, and you can see that almost every second or third year the same questions are repeated, and you are not doing anything else. You are not studying anything else. You are not unnecessarily preparing so much of notes. Go through all the last 6-7 years of UPSC Indian administration questions and try to find out the best answers to all those questions. Automatically those questions will be repeated every year. As I said, in personal administration, civil services, administrative reforms, the same questions are asked every year. The questions can be about recruitment. The questions, yesterday, the government, UPSC had come out with notification regarding lateral entry, 45 positions. So immediately the question will be asked both in our paper 1 as well as in Indian administration about lateral entry. The same question will be asked in your governance as part of civil services reforms. The same question can be asked in your ethics paper. So you can easily predict the questions. You can easily find out what kind of questions are asked. So for Indian administration, you are not doing anything except revising past 6-7 years of UPSC question papers, because the issues also have not changed much in the last 6-7 years. The same issues: declining standards of our parliament, presidential form of democracy government, and then a conflict between the center and states, and need for civil services reforms, budgetary reforms, then this Niti Aayog. Every year they have to ask a question about Niti Aayog, because the planning had become outdated. UPSC should change the syllabus, because this syllabus was changed by UPSC in 2008. That is when they have included coalition governments. But 2014 onwards we had only single party rule. It had become irrelevant. Now it is becoming relevant again. And planning commission is not there. NDC is not there. So they could have removed that. Maybe that could have been part of your history, not public administration. Right? So take last 6-7 years and practice the questions. And that it does not mean that you have to write answers. The moment you see the question, you should be able to know what is your introduction, what is your explanation, and what is your conclusion. And if you can do those things, you are not preparing anything apart from getting all the current facts. In the last 1 year, what are the major facts? For example, in the previous Lok Sabha, this is 18th Lok Sabha, I think. In the 17th Lok Sabha, how many bills were passed without any discussion or debate on the floor of the House? How many bills were sent to select committees of Parliament? How many times the budget was guillotined? And how Ethics Committee of Parliament has come out with recommendations that ultimately led to the removal of the membership of one of the MPs in Lok Sabha, disqualified. And how the Speaker last year had suspended 146 MPs. And the question will be asked, politicization of the office of the Speaker. Because in our Indian administration, the questions are more political. In paper, polity governance paper, they can ask questions about what are the functions and the role of the Speaker. There you have to again give the facts. And then you have to come out with the solutions also. So this is what you have to do. For Indian administration, you are not studying anything else except looking at all the current events of last 1 year and practicing last say 6 or 7 years of question papers, because UPSC is repeating the same questions, and that will be covering your entire polity also, polity and governance. And what you can do in your Indian administration, your knowledge of fundamental rights and DPSPs can be used to write better answers also in a polity, because in our Indian administration we do not directly talk about FRs or DPSPs. We don't directly study them. We will go from directly from constitutionalism and political culture to union government. In between, we will not be studying about FRs or DPSPs. But you will talk about these FRs and DPSPs indirectly through judiciary, different phases of judiciary. So that is what you have to do. Otherwise, it does not require much of a preparation. And as I mentioned, if you are getting out of 250 marks in Indian administration, if you are getting around say 150, 155 marks, you must also score 130 marks in your polity governance paper. Because in governance, all these topics are there. Ministries and departments, e-governance, citizen charters, social audits, RTI, public-private partnerships, regulatory authorities, then self-help groups, civil services reforms. All these topics are there in your governance. When you are writing answers, you will be writing the best of the answers using your in-depth knowledge of public administration. That is why I said, I keep on saying repeatedly that you must be scoring at least 130 marks. And at least again 130 marks in your ethics paper, because all ethics case studies are about governance. That is what you have to remember. So this is what it is, and then any other doubts if you have related to Indian administration, you can ask. Yeah.
Sir, you told that we can use the knowledge of a thinker in GS paper 2 without mentioning.
Exactly.
In case of answer writing between GS paper 2 and Pavan, there would be not much of a difference.
Not at all. As I said, the only difference in Indian administration is when you are writing answers, as and where it is possible, you are bringing the thinker's name. As I said, you are writing about coalition governments. You are bringing in MP Fole and her concept of integration. You are writing about, say, declining standards of our parliamentary democracy. You are bringing in RICS, prismatic society. The structures we have inherited from diffracted societies, but the functioning of these structures is completely influenced by few society attitudes. In GS papers, you are not mentioning the RICS, but you are writing the same concept. And that's what I am saying. I am not saying you are not mentioning RICS or prismatic society. You say that Indian parliamentary democracy is modeled on Westminster form of democracy, but its functioning is characterized by, the attitudes of a less developed society. Exactly. And you are not using the technical terms like prismatic society or diffracted society or structural functional approach. You are not using, but you are using the concepts without the technical names, and also without mentioning the names of the thinkers. And that is where in your polity governance paper you will be scoring more better than those who are having general studies, who will be studying only Lakshmikant or DD Bus for their polity.
And sir, one more thing, apart from the questions which are directly asked from current affairs, where can we use current affairs in general answer writing of Pavan?
In public administration, as I said, in paper 1, for every question, you can always give examples from current events. Every question. That is what I keep on saying. Link paper 1 concepts with current events. That's what I keep on saying all the time. If you are very good with your general studies, you will be writing excellent answers in your public administration. Current examples from say polity, economy, society, governance, and international relations. Everywhere you can use those examples and give it in your paper 1. That is what we say interlinkages. In paper 1, the only thing that you have to remember here is that once you explain the concepts given by that particular thinker, the next focus will be on analysis. And what is that analysis? Basically you are analyzing the thoughts given by the thinker by linking them to what is happening in our society, so that you are sending a message to the evaluator that not only you have the conceptual clarity, but you also have the necessary skills to apply those concepts to real life situations. As I said, if you are writing about Mary Parker Follett, if you are writing about Elton Mayo, if you are writing about Chester Bernard, if you are writing about Herbert Simon, if you are writing about Douglas McGregor, for example, Douglas McGregor's participative management is more relevant for present day organizations. Give the example of this software IT sector. Give the example of research organizations where you have only what is called horizontal hierarchies. Give the example of Gram Sabhas, where there is participative decision making process. So you are only giving examples not only from Indian administration, you are also giving examples from private sector. With artificial intelligence, these vertical hierarchies can become a thing of the past with artificial intelligence. And that is what you have to write in your answers. So that is what you have to develop. Have a very good knowledge about the current affairs. As I said, including international relations. And use that knowledge to link the thinkers and the concepts in paper 1. That is where in paper 1 you will be scoring 155, 160 marks. Because everyone, the curse of public administration is that the number of thinkers are very less. Everyone can write about those thinkers. It's not like political science, wherein you have hundreds of thinkers. It's not like sociology. Every second person is a sociologist. In public administration, not like that. Maximum 10 thinkers. So everyone will write the same answer. If I am evaluating the answer sheets, why should I give the marks? Unless and until you are able to link the thinker's concepts to current events. That is what it is important. And second, you must link between the thinkers also, because participative management, it is given by the 3 thinkers: Francis Likert, Douglas McGregor, Chris Argyris. You can you can make a comparison between them. You can make easily a comparison between Taylor and Fayol. You can make a comparison between Taylor and Gulick and Erwick. You can make a comparison between Weber and Simon. You can make a comparison between Bernard and Simon, which is what you have to focus on. Then automatically you'll be writing again best of the answers. Right? Any other questions? Okay, now let me take up some of the questions that were asked in the last 2 years. Some difficult questions. Yeah. Any source for welfare schemes? It's a good question. You can see this in this year's economic survey itself. It has given almost all the welfare schemes in different topics, especially go through the topics related to human resource development, social sector, agriculture. You can see all those schemes. Yeah. See, you can read this year's economic survey also, because in 1 year there will not be any drastic changes. Exactly. Yes, this is the best time. That's what you have to do. So let us take up some of the questions that were asked in the previous years, in the last 2 years, and see how to answer those questions. So let us look at some of these questions that were asked in the past 2 years. I have taken around 5 questions from paper 1 and 5 questions from Indian administration. This was asked last year. As you can see here, formally advocated for cultivating interdependence and collaboration among individuals as the key to resolving conflicts and establishing more harmonious and all-encompassing social structures. Discuss. For these kind of questions, the best part of it is that the answer is always there in the question itself. If you understand the statement, half the job is done. This is what we say all the time about answer writing. When we talk about answer writing, the first thing that you must remember all the time is understanding the question is the first part of your answer writing. So look at the statement. Formally advocated. That means she strongly supported for cultivating interdependence and collaboration among individuals. That means she strongly supported this kind of coordination and interdependence among the people as the key to resolving conflicts. How do you resolve conflicts? When there is better coordination, when there is better dependence among the people, and establishing more harmonious and all-encompassing social structures. That means this is necessary for harmonious functioning of the institutions and organizations. That is what she has said. Discuss. So you have understood the question, what she was trying to say. She was giving a lot of importance to integration, coordination. Why? Because that is necessary to resolve the conflicts. That is also necessary to ensure harmonious functioning of the organizations. So this is what the question says. Now, how to start your answer with introduction. So how do you start your answer with introduction? How do you answer? As I keep on saying all the time, introduction should always start with the why aspect of the question. Why did Foley come out with this statement? Why? Why? Because you have to look at the conditions that were prevailing in our nations at that point of time, 1920s and 1930s. What were the conditions? America, was experiencing this Great Depression. Capitalism had become a dirty word. Why? Because it was believed that this greed of the capitalists was responsible for the collapse of the markets. And there is every danger that the world might again go back to socialism. Someone has to rescue capitalism. And Fowler has done with her theory. She had justified capitalism. How? That is the reason why she is called a neoclassical thinker. Why she is called a neoclassical thinker? Because she had given different interpretation to classical ideas. She never rejected, these capitalism or organizations. Only she said that they could be functioned in a more better and efficient manner. In classical organizations also, all these concepts are there: power, authority, control. All of them are there in classical organizations also. But what she had done, she had given a different interpretation. That is the reason why we call it as a capitalism with a human face. That is the reason why she had come out with all these things. Why? Because in classical organizations, how do they resolve the conflicts? Through dominance. That leads to exploitation. That leads to exploitation. And if this exploitation becomes severe, it can result in revolution. That is when the social structures can become more intolerant. There will be a lot of instability. So how to make sure that there will be harmonious functioning of these social structures? And what can be done to ensure harmonious functioning of these social structures? That is when MP Fowler had come out with her solution. And what she has said is that focus on interdependence of people working within the organizations. And that is the reason why she said that her entire theory is all about protecting the self-esteem, prestige, status of people working in the organization. Why? Because classical organizations have converted deliberately human beings into machines. And they did not give any kind of freedom or creativity or independence to people at the lower level. And through principles of organization, they kept on exploiting the people by defining motivation only in terms of economic incentives. That led to this kind of conflicts within the organizations. And whenever any kind of conflict comes, they try to resolve the conflicts through domination. And this domination can never provide any permanent solutions. And that is what your introduction. Failure of the classical theories to provide long-lasting solutions to the problems faced by organizations has led MP Fowler to come out with her neoclassical theory. That is how your introduction should be. Then after that, you can explain her concepts in a brief, concise manner about integration, about conflict resolution, about horizontal hierarchies that her organization has, about the assumption that she has made that people are intelligent, capable, and responsible. You can write all of them. Then, as I said, you have to focus on the analytical aspects. That means by linking it to Indian administration. What are the examples you can give here from Indian administration for MP Fowler? What are the examples? I give you the example of union-state relations. Union-state relations. Mostly union-state relations are mostly determined by the dominance of the union government over the states, which results in conflicts in the social structures. If you need harmonious functioning of these social structures, that interdependence must be recognized. Interdependence must be recognized. And you must give respect to the institutions and individuals. And then, then this is about vertical. In horizontal, we are talking about the interdependence between the various ministries and departments. Otherwise, it results in what you call, what our Prime Minister has also called it as, the wars between the departments and ministries over their domains. Once they recognize the interdependence, automatically coordination becomes that much more easier. So you have to give these examples. Whether it is for improving the functioning of our Secretariat administration, whether it is for ensuring this collaborative federalism, MP Fowler becomes important. The solution has to be found through integration, wherein both the parties involved in the conflict must come together, sit together, willing to resolve the conflicts through negotiations and discussions and find out an integrated solution. You can give lots of examples here. Again, for these kind of questions, the answer is always there in the question itself. That's what I said. For paper 1, you don't have to prepare anything as such. For all the thinkers, the answer is there in the question itself. Only thing that you have to do is, you have to make sure that you are linking them as and where it is possible to the thinkers. And after writing all these things, you have to talk about the other aspect also. But in reality, to put these things into practice can be very difficult. Why? Because the natural tendency of people is always to dominate others in case of any conflict. That is the reason why we have seen so many conflicts, whether it is in private organizations or within the government. And MP Fale also made the assumption that people are intelligent, capable and responsible, which is not the case. Not everyone is intelligent, not everyone is capable, and not everyone is responsible also. That is where again the problem is. And we have not created institutions that could perform this task of integration. We have come out with Niti Aayog, but unfortunately it does not have any real powers. And we have cabinet secretariat. It can be dominated by PMO. So again you have to give examples. Next, this also was asked last year. Organizational theory is not a single theory with a loosely knit of many approaches to organizational analysis, and it provides different answers to different situations. Again, what have you understood by this statement? What have you understood by this statement? What have you understood? I said understanding the question is the most important part of your answer writing. Organizational theory is not a single theory with a loosely knit of many approaches to organizational analysis. That means whatever we study in public administration as part of organizational theories is not a single theory using different approaches, but it provides different answers to different situations. That means there is no common link between all the organizational theories, because those theories are a response to conditions prevailing in society at different time periods. That is what the question says. So, if this is the case, how to answer this question? How to answer this question? So, what are the organizational theories that we are talking about here? We are talking about classical theories. We are talking about neoclassical theories. We are talking about behavioral theories. We are talking about systems theories. And do all these theories talk about the same thing? Do they follow the same common approach? No. The thinkers here had come out with different solutions depending on the different time periods, contexts. And for example, take the case of classical thinkers. What did the classical thinkers do? Classical thinkers, when they had come out with their theories, what was the condition prevailing in the society? The conditions prevailing in the society was that people were poor, backward and illiterate. When people were poor, backward and illiterate, what are they looking for? They are looking for satisfying their basic needs. They are looking for safety and security regarding their future. And that is the reason why classical thinkers had come out with those solutions. People are willing to be transformed into machines for safety and security. Are they looking for self-esteem? Are they looking for creativity or independence? They are not looking for any higher level needs. They are looking to satisfy only basic needs, and classical theories had become successful because they reflected the conditions in the society. Different situations, different solutions. Then come to neoclassical thinkers. And what about the conditions in the society? Neoclassical thinkers. In case of neoclassical thinkers, already those who entered into the organizations were what you call them as a second and third generation workers. Their basic needs are already satisfied. As we study with Abraham Maslow, a need which is satisfied would stop acting as a motivator. They were looking to satisfy higher level needs, social needs and self-esteem needs. That is why neoclassical thinkers had come out with the solutions. Then come to behavioral thinkers. Behavioral thinkers went a little bit above neoclassical thinkers. They rejected the entire approach here. And they said that organization is a social system consisting of dynamic human beings. And they rejected this neoclassical approach because this neoclassical approach is nothing but an extension of classical approach. And these neoclassical theories ultimately had proved to be theories of manipulation. That is the reason why behavioral thinkers defined organization as a social system consisting of dynamic human beings, and they started looking at the organization only from the perspective of workers. They had come out with radically different concepts. And that is why they had come out with this. Then what happened? When all these theories proved to be a failure in coming out with a universal theory of a public administration, that is when Ricks had completely adopted a different approach. He said that he would adopt ecological approach. He said that he would adopt a deductive approach to theory formulation, because all these thinkers have only adopted inductive approach. And he said that he would adopt from ideographic to nomothetic. Why? Because as again the societies progressed more, we are going more deeper into analysis to come out with a universal theory. Because till then, classical, neoclassical, behavioral, all of them were looking at the conditions in America and coming out with the solutions to the problems of America, and had the arrogance to call those solutions universal. That is why Ricks came out with the systems approach. That is what you have to write for this question. As I said, conceptual clarity is what is required. Then let us look at other questions. Right? This was asked again last year. Monetary policy and fiscal policy are different, but both are used to regulate economy. Discuss. Yes. Exactly. That's what that's what we have said. Different answers to different situations. In 1950s, the situation was completely different. For the first time, public administration was trying to become universal, because the administrative thinkers from America had traveled to the rest of the world, and they had seen conditions that are radically different in the rest of the world, the kind of condition they had seen in America. That is when they had come out with the comparative public administration. That's what we are saying. That's what we have mentioned. Different answers to different situations. Next, monetary policy and fiscal policy are different, but both are used to regulate economy. Discuss. Right? Again, the answer is there in the question itself. Why monetary policy and fiscal policy are different, and what are the common aspects between fiscal and monetary policies? So how do you write, start your introduction for this question? How do you start your introduction for this question? What kind of introduction you have to give for this question? How do you start introduction? The objective of any public policy is to maximize welfare of people. Monetary policy and fiscal policies are part of public policies. The objective of any public policy is to maximize welfare of people. Fiscal policy will use different instruments. Monetary policy will be using radically different instruments, but the ultimate objective is to increase GDP, to increase per capita income, to reduce prices, to ensure job-led growth, infrastructure development, industrialization, common objectives at the end of the day. That is what it says. Both are used to regulate economy. So how they are different? That is what the essence of your answer. How they are different? Why? Because the instruments used by fiscal policy are different from monetary policy. How fiscal policy is different from monetary policy? In case of fiscal policy, the impact is direct and immediate. In case of fiscal policy, the impact is direct and immediate. In case of monetary policy, it is indirect and it has a very long gestation period. Long gestation period. Right? Then this monetary policy, it is mostly used for what? To control inflation. To control inflation. Whereas fiscal policy is used for other objectives. That is GDP growth rate, increasing per capita income, employment, infrastructure, industrialization. Next, this monetary policy is determined by the central bank. And where do you find fiscal policy? In the budgets. In the budgets. Fiscal policy can be seen in the budgets. And then success of monetary policy require an integrated and a very well developed financial system. An integrated and very well developed financial system. Whereas a fiscal policy does not require any institutional support. Institutional support does mean it does not require any very developed banking system or anything like that, because the government says that tomorrow onwards we are reducing the prices of petroleum products by reducing the taxes. Automatically the prices will come down. Do you require any decline in reducing these interest rates so that the banks also will reduce their lending rates? Then then there will be more demand for goods and services. So that this kind of interlinkages are needed for fiscal policy? No. That is what we say here, right? Then during the times of recession and depression, monetary policy is not effective. Monetary policy is not effective. For example, during the corona crisis, what did the Reserve Bank of India do? It has reduced drastically repo rates and reverse repo rates. But did it result in any expansion in our economic activity? No. On the other hand, during the times of recession and depression, fiscal policy is more effective. But at the end of the day, both fiscal policy and monetary policy are used to regulate, control the functioning of the economic system. That is what you have to write. Next, this also question was asked last year only. the management of sound public finances used to be the backbone of administrative system, but unfortunately it has become prisoner of a populistic policies. Critically evaluate. This is current affairs. This is current affairs. The management of sound public finances used to be the backbone of administrative system. What do you mean? Pardon? So what do we mean by this? You are evaluating the efficiency of your administrative system in terms of your ability to manage your finances in a constructive manner. What does it mean? In terms of your ability to reduce fiscal deficits, in terms of your ability to reduce revenue deficits, in terms of your ability to reduce your interest payments, primary deficit, in terms of your ability to reduce your public debt, in terms of your ability to increase your tax revenues, in terms of your ability to control unproductive revenue expenditure. That used to be the barometer to evaluate the soundness of your administrative and financial systems. But what is happening in the recent past is this has become a prisoner of populistic policies. That is what we have seen. Why? Again, you have to focus on the why aspect of the question. Why? Why do you think it has become prisoner of the populistic policies? Why? Again, this you have to write multidimensional answers. First and foremost, as and when a development takes place, one of the consequences of development is the aspirations of the people will also increase. If you are giving them something, they are not satisfied, they want more. Give them more, they are not satisfied, they want much more. So it results in a situation wherein the governments are forced to come out with so many policies, schemes and programs to satisfy the increasing demands of the people. We are giving this from public policy perspective. Second, in a country like India, competitive populism is what that mostly determines electoral outcomes. Competitive populism. Third, technology. Thanks to developments in technology in the recent past, it has become easier for the government to transfer money into the accounts of people without any corruption. That is what is called DBTs. DBTs. And fourth, political parties have also realized that this short-term political populism can easily win them elections. They don't have to worry about spending on capital expenditure. If people are unemployed, give them unemployment allowance. Right? Rather than creating employment for them, which is a very difficult task, give them unemployment allowance. Transfer money into the accounts of the people. If you cannot double farmers' income, come out with the PM Kisan. Right? And if they are not able to get a productive employment, start more NREGA. And if you are not able to build hospitals, no problem. Ayushman Bharat. And transfer money into the accounts of people. That is what political parties also have realized. They have realized the fact that building infrastructure and ensuring long-term sustainable development is not possible within the 5-year term that they have. And they have to face elections after every 5 years. And that is the reason why. And more importantly, these kind of legislations like FRBM also have not been successful. Why? Why they have not been successful? The state government are resorting to off-budget borrowings. What they are doing? They are creating these public corporations. These corporations are only there on paper. And these corporations will be taking money from loans from the banks. And the state governments will be providing guarantee to the loans taken by the corporations. Once they get the loans, the money will be duly transferred to the government, and the government will be using that money to transfer into the accounts of the people through various DBTs. And through this, what you are doing? You are easily deceiving the central government. And you are telling that in the central government, what are the fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is only about the borrowings directly by the government. Does it include the borrowings of these public sector enterprises or public corporations? So you are manipulating the statistics. This is what is happening. And on the other hand, political populism on the other side also. What is the political populism on the other side? Unwilling to impose taxes. For example, take the case of urban local self-governments. In United States of America, these urban local self-governments generate their maximum amount of resources through their own revenues. In India, these urban local self-governments get only 1% of their revenues through their own taxes. In America, it is more than 70%. Because they do not want to impose any kind of taxes. And on the other hand, they are giving free of cost electricity, drinking water, sanitation, everything is given free of cost. That is the reason why these things are happening. What is the solution? Solution is very simple. In a strict implementation of FRBM Act, change the definition of fiscal deficit to include the borrowings of the state governments through their public corporations also, of budget borrowings also, and make it mandatory by making changes to the FRBM legislation that whether a central government or state government must spend at least 40% of their budgeted expenditure only on capital expenditure, and make it also mandatory that they are spending at least 6% of their GDP on education and health, and then remove all undeserving beneficiaries of these welfare schemes. Instead of the principle of inclusion, the principle of exclusion should be followed. Exclude all those undeserving beneficiaries. Yes. Yeah, exactly. You can mention Kautilya here. Kautilya has said that what is good governance? He said that as part of good governance, fiscal management, 20% of the revenues should be spent only on salaries and other expenses of the king. Remaining 80% should be spent on capital expenditure. You can mention. That is what you have to write for this question. Again, these are all the questions which are related to what you call current events. And the same question can be asked in your governance. The same question can be asked in your economy also. Next, Weber's construct of bureaucracy has served a great heuristic purpose in furthering research in the field of comparative public administration. Do you agree with the statement? Give your reasons. This was asked before last year. This is a theoretical question. So what are the question here says here? Weber's construct of bureaucracy has served a great heuristic purpose in furthering research in the field of CPA. Do you agree? Give reasons. So what have you understood by the question? What is that you have understood by looking at this question? So as we study in CPA, there are different approaches to study comparative public administration. The oldest approach to study CPA is Max Weber's bureaucratic theory of organization. And what are the other approaches? We have a systems approach, structural functional approach, ecological approach, then developmental approach. These are all different approaches. But what we say here is that Weber's bureaucratic theory is the oldest approach to study CPA. That is what the question says. It has served a great heuristic purpose. Heuristic purpose means academic research. In furthering the research in the field of CPA. Do you agree? Definitely. Why? Because all CPA thinkers ultimately have used Weber's bureaucratic theory. The first, Ferrell Hedy, who had conceptualized the evolution of CPA. The first stage in this CPA is what is called institutionalism. Second one is structural functional approach. Third one is middle range theories. And if you look at this institutionalism, it is nothing but Weberian bureaucracy. So what, as part of this institutionalism, what you are doing, you are basically studying the administrative systems of developed countries. Why? To make a comparison. If the administrative systems display all the features of Weberian bureaucracy, automatically you will say that their administrative systems are efficient. Because Weberian bureaucracy, Max Weber has said that he is coming out with an idealistic model. If any country has most of these features present, then automatically the administrative system will be efficient. What is the objective of comparison? What is the essence of comparison? The essence of comparison is to find out the relative strengths and weaknesses, and maximize the strengths and minimize the weaknesses. And that is where Weberian bureaucracy becomes extremely important, whether for a developed country or developing country. In the initial stages of evolution of CPA, Weberian bureaucracy has served a great heuristic purpose. Why? Because all these developed countries have made a comparison with Weberian bureaucracy in terms of the structures they have. And in developing countries also the same thing was done. That is the reason why, if you remember, Paul Appleby, when he came to India in 1951 and 1953 as part of Ford Foundation funding, he said that Indian bureaucracy, Indian civil services is one of the most efficient civil services in the world. Why? Weber. That is what you have to write for this question. Ricks, again, has used Weberian bureaucracy only. How did he define a diffracted society? And how did he talk about formalism in a prismatic society? How did he talk about this what we call the prismatic Sala model? Everything is based on Weberian bureaucracy. When he spoke about neo-patrimonial bureaucracy, he was making a comparison with Max Weber. When he spoke about prebendary offices, he was making a comparison with Max Weber. When he spoke about formalism in the functioning of bureaucracy, he was comparing with Max Weber. When he spoke about this deviation from the rule of law in the prismatic societies, he was comparing to Max Weber. That is the reason why almost all thinkers in comparative public administration have used Max Weber as their ideal model and made a comparison of the administrative systems of the countries around the world to see whether those administrative systems are efficient or not. On a scale of 1 to 10, in administrative systems of America and UK are at around 8 or 9 because they mostly conform to Weberian norms. On the other hand, in prismatic societies like India, it is only on a scale of 1 to 10, 2 to 3 only. That is why we are not efficient. That is what you have to write for these questions. And the rest of the questions also in paper 2. As I have discussed just now, Indian Prime Minister is more empowered than his British counterpart in the Western Parliament. We have seen this one. Attempts to prepare unified and holistic plans for the country are complex and full of challenges. Why preparing holistic plans? Why one size fits all approach cannot be successful in India? You have to talk about again prismatic society, diversity, geographical, political, administrative, social, cultural, and environmental. You have to talk about all of them. What is good for western part of Uttar Pradesh may not be good for eastern part of UP. When you cannot have a single plan for the entire state, can you have a single plan for the entire country? You have to write about all those things. The dynamics of coalition vary with the nature of leadership, political parties, and contemporary political conditions. You have to give a lot of examples, right from 1989 VP Singh government to the present Prime Minister. Vary with the nature of leadership. The coalitions are successful when the leadership was very strong. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. On the other hand, they were not successful when the leadership was not strong. Manmohan Singh. And political parties, when the coalitions contain political parties with similar ideologies, they will be successful. For example, UPA government, why it was not successful? Because they had different ideologies. And the parties which are supporting the coalition also had different ideologies. Left parties were supporting the coalition which were totally against globalization. That is the reason why they were not successful. And then, and the contemporary political conditions. Obviously, more than sufficient. That should be more than sufficient. Because that is the reason why, we normally in our classes spend a lot of time on exactly. That should be more than sufficient. Next, do you agree that the code of conduct and code of ethics for ministers would help in upholding the higher standards of their constitutional and ethical conduct? Explain. It is necessary but not sufficient. Again, go back to Ricks. The functioning of the political system is influenced by administrative system, social cultural systems, economic system. If there is so much of corruption in the economic system, through crony capitalism, can code of conduct and code of ethics will be sufficient. Second, when the political culture is dominated by emotions and sentiments, not by cognitions, then code of conduct or code of ethics will be sufficient. No. When the functioning of bureaucracy is, as we again study with, characterized by what is called prismatic Sala model, can they again code of conduct for ministers and code of ethics for ministers will be sufficient? No, it is necessary but not sufficient. We need to implement other reforms simultaneously apart from having code of conduct and code of ethics. That is what we say. Then, following the onset of the globalization, the traditional bureaucratic model appears to have lost its significance. That is what we say. Why? Because the traditional bureaucratic model, which focuses on hierarchy, written communication, rule orientation, working in independent silos, secrecy, has lost its relevance. That is the reason why we talk about new public governance approach. I said, you can see all the questions here, they are not at all difficult. Once your basic concepts are clear, you will definitely be writing best answers. And that's what I said. At the end of the day, our objective should be to make sure that you are getting those 280 to 90 marks. And more importantly, in GS paper 2 and GS paper 4, you should be getting at least 130, 140 marks using your knowledge of public administration. So this is what it is. I think we can stop it here for today. And it's a very extensive session. And any kind of doubts you can ask. Okay, no problem. Then best of luck, and make sure that you are writing very good answers. Only thing that you have to remember is that simplicity, clarity, interlinkages, multidimensional answers. That is the only thing that you have to remember, whether it is optional or general studies papers. Right? Okay, best of luck.